first project they handed me was this mountain bike problem. They had nobody that knew how to deal with the mountain bikers and road trails being built, and they wanted somebody with a fresh, young attitude that had a different perspective. So, I my first meeting was out on Gooseberry Mesa with some of the other founding rogue trail builders and three policemen
To keep the peace, or
to keep the peace.
okay,
Yeah,
Oh, I love this.
we handled it though. We didn't need them.
yeah.
Welcome to Brainstoke. I'm Tom Telford here with Preston Niederhauser. We are in studio today with Cimarron Chacon, who is an incredible trail advocate, knows so many things that are going on across the country, especially in southern Utah, which is our backyard, our favorite place on the planet, actually. I'm gonna dive right into this one, Cimarron, if you don't mind. Actually, I'm gonna let you key it up.
Well,
because this is your
It's low hanging fruit. I mean, we all are going to want to know your favorite trail in southern Utah.
My favorite. Oh gosh, that's. I think it's literally impossible to answer.
Cimarron, you got to at least jump into this one because one of my favorite go-to places for my stoke of life is well, I'm going to dive into two of them. Talk about Bear Claw a little bit, but you got to at least start with Gooseberry because Gooseberry is like, I mean, you're part of the founding, I'm going to call it the founding mother, right? I mean, not founding fathers, but the founding mother of Goose is like, this is at the top of your resume.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I would say, I mean, Gooseberry for the history, the legacy, the things it taught me. I got married there.
No,
That's awesome.
I love
2000.
it.
Just the year that it was made an official trail. Bear Claw Poppy is one of my favorites because I feel like I saved it. It was going to be all closed off and shut off to recreation. It's also was just for many years the go-to. I can get there at lunchtime, do a hot lap, and go home and feel refreshed for the afternoon.
Yeah.
The whole gem system. There's no one favorite trail I have out there. It's all about putting together an adventurous day. For me, like which turn do I make this way? Let's do it backwards. That variety, and then barrel rolls. That was the very last trail that I wrote a master plan for the Santa Clara River Reserve, and so that whole area I got to watch. I didn't build it; I only designed it, but I got to see a vision, see others build that vision. So
How did you find yourself in this position? Tell us a little bit about how this all came to be.
I have a master's in landscape architecture, with a specialty in recreation design, and so I had an internship and then was bid on, I guess, and hired down in St. George. And the first project they handed me was this mountain bike problem. They had nobody that knew how to deal with the mountain bikers and road trails being built, and they wanted somebody with a fresh, young attitude that had a different perspective. So my first meeting was out on Gooseberry Mesa with some of the other founding rogue trail builders and three policemen.
To keep the peace, or
To keep the peace.
okay,
Yeah.
Oh, I love this.
We handled it though. We didn't need them.
yeah,
Sounds like an underground poker game here going on. Simona, it's so cool that you've been involved in this kind of grassroots, evolution over time. And I know that you're an architect. I mean, but were you stoked about trails? I mean, was this something where you're thinking, hey, if I could just play in the dirt and, look at, maps all day long and weave trails, like, is that something you wanted to, or is it just the nature of that was the first job given to you?
No, I subliminally, I just feel like I was fortunate. And, oh, during my undergrad career, my best friend and I's father, he wanted, I mean, I've always loved bikes since I was a kid. I mean, I used to want to race in the Court Classic. I grew up in Boulder, Colorado. But he paid for a trip for us to go to Moab and rented us bikes, and we had no idea this, mountain bike skill was a new thing. Full suspension was a new thing. And I got done, and I told my friend I would just love if I could find a job where I get to design trails all day long and ride them at the same time. And then 3 years later, I got one. So it was meant to be.
Did it feel like it was a uphill battle with Washington County, or were they embracing all of your ideas? I mean, I'm trying to maybe tell us the timeline of when this all started as well, and if you give us a little insight.
Yeah, I moved to Washington County in late 1999.
Okay.
And so they knew they needed to get it done. I always have to give credit to my visionary of a boss. His name was Jim Crisp. He's long since retired, but he was really open-minded and his question was, go find out what other people are doing. Like, they were worried about liability, and, nobody knew about a purpose-built trail. So there was a lot of education. So I toured, a lot of places that had Moab, and a lot of places in the West that already had some existing plans, and then started creating our own based on different research. And I would say that the county was actually more than receptive. By 2002, I had created a vision plan, countywide vision plan, and it wasn't a document. It wasn't. They were big fat lines, but it was, how could we connect the county, both mountain bike trails, bike paths, safe routes and all this. And I didn't realize how powerful that vision was until many years later. The people were I think it was Washington City, were lobbying for a new trail because it was on that plan. And people, they caught on to the vision. So I would say the county's been excited and behind it. I don't think they had any idea how it would grow.
Yeah.
But there was always support. The reluctance is just that bureaucracy hadn't caught up yet.
Which we need to dive into. I'm intrigued to know, though, when you say the term purpose-driven trail, what does that mean to you? Define that for us.
Well, it means that it was planned and it was thought about. Whether it's a big process, but one, that the trail isn't going through any sensitive areas, any sensitive habitat, or anything that's gonna cause a conflict. That it is, it's just like when you have a house, you're like, oh, I want a 1-story, a 2-story, I want a ranch or whatever. When you think about a trail, it's like, oh, I want an intermediate trail, I want a flow trail, I want a technical trail. And so all of these goals are set up ahead of time. That it has flow, that it has connectivity. It's not just a trail that goes out and back to nowhere. And what was happening with sort of rogue trails is that they were sometimes cool, but they didn't have any rhythm or flow. You would have a section that would be really technical, and then the next section would be really, really easy. So a person that wanted to do an easy trail would have to go through something that was too hard to get there. So if you had a hard trail, then you have a filter so that people know, what they're getting into, that you have trail ratings. I could go on and on.
I'm glad you set it up, though, because I've ridden Preston and I, ride all of these trails, and it's fascinating to kind of just ride them and think through and stop, like look around. Now, how did they get here? How did they do this? So as an example, I've always wanted to ask whoever was involved in the design, but when you talk about flow and intention and, that it was well thought out and planned, tell me what the genesis of Hidden Canyon at Gooseberry was all about. Like, where did that piece in particular, how was that decided upon in the design of that? Because, for our listeners who are listening in, there's a section hidden in Gooseberry Mesa. It's 2 miles. It really connects the horseshoe in the middle. And the first time that I did it, I don't know, I think I was alone, but I remember going out there and I ended up in that spot. And I got all the way through it and I was laughing out loud. I couldn't believe that someone had created this piece of trail where it felt like you were in Lake Powell flying through the slot canyons, but you were on a bike and you were on a trail, and it was brilliant. I mean, I just remember thinking, whoever did this is really, really smart and well thought out. So take us through that, if you don't mind, just that piece in particular.
Yeah, I mean, I can't take a lot of credit. I think that was Dean Williamson who put that particular section together. So I kind of look at my role in Gooseberry as the editor. So I wasn't the writer; I was the editor. It had existed. There were pieces that were put together from between Dean Williamson, Mike and Morgan Harris, and Glenn Ames. Those were sort of the founding people, but everybody was sort of doing their own thing. Everybody sort of had a little section that they worked on. And as I said, sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. But the big thing that didn't work was the connectivity. So what I did was create more of a flow. So there were pieces like with the practice loop that didn't exist. That was actually one thing that I wanted, because I wanted to segment it into easy to swallow 1 mile sections, because the whole thing's only 10 miles, right?
Yep.
Or smaller sections that you could progress, right? So make it a progressive system. When we got to Hidden Canyon, it just flowed with everything. It was in the right place at the right time. It fit going both ways, which we loved. So there wasn't much we touched on that. I think there was probably one small section that was over the Black Diamond level that we cut out. There were actually quite a few over the Black Diamond level pieces that were cut out. They probably exist as road lines now, but the official trail, had to flow and progress so that people, again, didn't get in trouble, didn't get way out, and then they couldn't get back, or they would kill themselves. Or whatever.
It's fascinating to dive into a conversation with someone who has had their hands on so many of these places. And, for Brainstoke, the interest level is because these have become our places of stoke, right? The literal memories. I mean, my boys, I have 2 boys, they both know, like, Gooseberry Mesa is like a special place. Like, when we go there, we're going to hallowed ground. Like, this is that spot, right? It's like going to Moab and riding the Intrepid Trail at Dead Horse Point or some of these kind of iconic places, which I have to ask, and maybe you can bring this up, Preston, but when you were doing research for all that you were going to do in St. George, you talked about traveling and kind of researching and learning. Was Moab part of your, was that required reading, so to speak, or studying to determine what you were going to do?
Yeah, it was. Specifically the Portal Trail. Because that was the hardest, most exposed trail that existed at the time. I don't even know if people still ride it. I still think it's stupid, but there had been bets.
I love it.
Did that give birth to suicidal tendencies?
Possibly the name.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean that it's okay if you have the proper filters and leading up to it, then the people that have the skill to ride those kinds of trails are okay to ride them.
Yeah.
So it was, yeah, learning a lot about, like I said, liability, communication, uh, that kind of stuff, which is what the government is concerned about if they're going to purpose build a trail
Yeah.
or legalize a trail.
There's so much trail building going on, across the state of Utah right now, and a lot of expansion. What are you learning or seeing in southern Utah? I mean, that's your neck of the woods, for our listeners to know. Cimarron is highly involved in a number of races. I mean, you're the race director. You own those series, 25 Hours of Frog Hollow, True Grit, which I want to dive into, which is coming up here soon. But just speak overall, what you're hearing, learning, seeing, in your neck of the woods.
Actually, so in all honesty and truthfulness, I founded what was used to be the DMBTA. It's now TUSA, the advocacy group. I can't even remember when I founded it, because we needed to keep the momentum going, and I served on many tourism boards and the RAC committee and the countywide trails committee, and then I passed them on. So there's a whole other group of people who've carried on the legacy, and I'm not strongly involved in the new stuff, but that also makes me feel proud that I created something that can be carried on by other people and other generations. There's a whole new downhill park and a whole section of trail in Pine Valley that I can't wait to check out this spring, and I didn't do anything with it, which is makes me really happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, ride the trails, right? You don't have to work on them, but you want to ride them. So Pine Valley's amazing. I mean, that's going to be a gem, I would think.
Yeah, well, it's been needed. It was the untapped gem, the resource, because it's so hot in St. George that there's not year-round riding. There's winter riding. And this opens up the riding season, immensely.
I've got to think there's an immense sense of joy, and you alluded to it. I mean, St. George all but rivals and arguably is better than Moab now in terms of the amount of trails, mileage, the network, the connectivity. It's spectacular, and maybe it's a little bit more family friendly. So all of these NICA racers, we all find ourselves in St. George versus Moab when we want to go ride our bike. And I think that all probably leads back to that little fat black line on your plan, so that's really awesome. I mean, it's really remarkable what you've been able to create.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cimarron, is there
Yes,
any?
it's better than and it is better than Moab.
I'm with you 100%.
Here we go, throwing down. Do you have one that has just a special place in your heart that you've been involved with?
You mean
Trails.
a trail?
Yep.
I mean, I think the barrel rolls in the Santa Clara River Reserve, that area was envisioned. It was all me from scratch. There was nothing there before that happened. So, and it's not just the barrel roll. I mean, there still could be more trails built, and it included hiking trails, and so that area, I think that plan was the most important. I had a lot of sleepless nights, and got to see, like I said, the ground being broken, and now people are riding it, and according to the BLM, it is the most ridden trail system in all of St. George.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
It actually, there are fewer places, that I want to watch the sunrise or the sunset. than in that trail system. In fact, the trail system got me in a really sticky spot, Cimarron, in my marriage for a couple of years because I ended up buying, I wanted a lot, when that neighborhood was created right at the bottom of the road. I was
Yeah.
like, well, I have to own a lot and build a house at the access to this place. So we no longer own the dirt. We've since sold it. But yeah, I mean, it is special. It's an incredible place. It's super cool. The top of that trail system, I call it the lollipop, right? Because it's kind of an out and back circle, but at the top of there has this lollipop that is incredible for a bike handler to try to, not touch that foot down. So, when you were first designing that, was that on purpose? You wanted to take them through that tight spot in the rock?
Oh, the notch?
Yep.
Yeah.
The notch stresses me out. I mean, when I know we're going to that ride, I know I've got to get through the notch, and it's like, can I do this? Or
You have performance anxiety?
totally.
Yeah. On any system, I mean, you want to have that feature, at least one, if not two. It's got a name, and people refer to it, and it's got a challenge and discussion, and yeah. So
So
by all means,
fascinating
plus
to me.
the view from that spot is so killer.
Yeah,
It
is.
totally is. By the way, on that note, when you look out to the west from there, right, you're looking really towards the Nevada state line. Is that whole area out there possible for expansion? Or is that, safe soil zone where, we can't dabble in that space?
Yes and yes. So I think there is one connective trail that was part of that master plan, that could connect down over into Stooky Springs. I know it hasn't been built yet, but the rest of it is sensitive soil. It's also poppy habitat.
Yeah.
So there's you couldn't have endless trails, but eventually there might be one. The Dave Keel, who did a lot of the building out there, I think had planned to do it, then he retired. So I don't know if anybody's gonna pick that back up or not.
Sure.
Can you provide maybe a little bit of advice for us? I mean, Tom and I are involved in the Morgan Valley Trail Foundation here in our county, and we've been working with Mark Hancock, he's the owner of Envy. He's trying to help connect trails from the Huntsville side to the Morgan side to potentially Wasatch County. So, I mean, the advocacy part of building trails and getting buy-in and support, how did you do that? And what did you see that worked?
So a couple things, have a good plan, be patient.
That's the hardest part. I mean,
Yeah, it is.
I mean, to get
It's very
movement.
hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you can, do baby steps. But because for some reason, and this still baffles me, even though we're 25 years into or more into this, legal trail, mountain bikes are a good thing. We still have that land manager that has no idea how it's done and can't imagine that you're not gonna ride your bike and go and peek in somebody's house, or ride your bike and go cut down trees, or all these things people aren't gonna do while they're riding their bike.
Right.
So it's a lot of communication. Sometimes just bringing in an expert trail builder, bring in the numbers. I mean, mountain biking builds economies.
Yeah, the economic
you go buy
impact
land
alone. It's interesting because when I think about the political implications, of parties and all of these, there's a lot of energy that goes into politics, but, maybe I'm wrong, but I could make a really strong argument that over the last 25 years, Cimarron's impact on the economics of Utah has been greater than any politician in its history in the state.
There's no doubt about it.
So when you just think about trails, the state of Utah probably should have, a statute of Cimarron in southern Utah somewhere, And I mean, we're kind of joking, but we're not, right? I mean, I think when St. George started to recognize, we've run into several, I don't know what you would call them, but people who are working out on BLM land for the state of Utah, right? They're state employees. And when we've stopped and talked to them, we've asked them, like, what are you guys doing? Oh, we're building trails. Well, is that your job? No, but that's what we do now because we recognize the economic impact on southern Utah is so great for trails that even though really we are supposed to be fighting forest fires, we're building trails now because of the economic impact. So speak to that a little bit more. I mean, it's huge for the state.
Oh, it is. And, I wish I had my numbers. Like, I cannot even fathom, but so your purpose. I mean, trails have so many good things, for health and mental health, economic impact. Mountain bikers are at the higher end of the economic spectrum. And because of what they're called, I'm forgetting the word, because of all of the benefits that a trail has that are intangible, not just you have a trail to ride, right? But the family, connectivity, connection to your neighborhood, connection to nature, all of these other benefits that you get, they become desirable. Plus, they're cheap. They're cheap to build. They're cheap to maintain compared to a golf course. They're not discriminatory. You can be 2 or 92 and go ride a trail, or walk a trail. You don't even need specialized equipment. So there's just that's the general benefits. Then, obviously not obviously, it's not obvious to people, but homes that are built next to trails, their values go up. The problem is most people don't want their house next to a trail because of the NIMBY effect. But once they do, you build a house next to a trail, and the only people that buy the houses eventually are the people that want to be next to the trail, and they're willing to pay a premium for it.
Right.
You can have events on trails. Events bring exposure to the area, and increased tourism on those trails. So they have that secondary use. Again, I wish I had all my numbers, but it would bore you.
No, it's all good. I mean, I'm in the mental health space every day. I'm married to a marriage and family therapist. We own mental health businesses, including Leva, who sponsors the podcast. And what I can tell you is that you talked about the economic implications. I'm talking about, the mental health implications, which in reality, indirectly are economic implications. The
Right.
amount of mental health days that Americans are taking out of work today, so that they can take care of themselves. Well, when they do, what do they do? They're trying to get outside. They're trying to recreate and be out. So
Yeah.
there is so many benefits, for trail building and what's going on in the state. I have to ask you, just in terms of your own journey, as you've built trails and as you've, ridden them and spent time outside, has it been of value to your personal life just to be in this? I mean, it's stressful, obviously, trying to advocate, but has it been a benefit to you personally?
Oh, I feel incredibly lucky. I mean, it's a lifestyle business. I get to earn my living. It's a dream. It's been a dream job, and every turn of my career, it's only gotten better. I mean, how great is it to know you get to make other people smile? Plus, when I'm working, I mean, yes, there's stress, but I get to be on a bike and say I'm working. I get to be, outside in nature and be working. That's a dream job.
It's awesome.
It's a dream career for sure.
It is cool. Preston and I have, in a small way, got to experience that. A couple of years ago, Preston took on this big challenge to build some single track trails in the neighborhoods we live in Mountain Green and Morgan County. And it's interesting when you talk about all of the benefits of trail. No doubt our neighborhood, it felt like when the trails were done, it started to gel the neighborhood in a different way. You know, you got to see kids on the trails every day. There's a reason why Morgan High School is so talented in high school racing, and it's because kids can come home from school and go out their front door and be on single track in seconds, right? I mean, the health of our community because of trails, physically and mentally, spiritually, all of those things, in my opinion, went up, you know, when Preston and others helped finish off the trails. So it's cool to hear the personal implications for you. At what point did you say, hey, I've been building trails all over the place. Now I want to shift gears and become, you know, a race director and and take on that challenge?
It wasn't like a shifting of gears. So I worked for the BLM for 10 years, and I had a promise to myself that I wouldn't be a forever government worker. I didn't want to get burnt out. I didn't want to get stuck. And so at 10 years, you're vested in the government, so you can go back if you want. So I quit, and I went into private practice. And I started doing a lot of projects with IMBA. At the time, worked in, and so I got to start traveling. Did projects in Puerto Rico, California, Mammoth, California, in Nevada. Those were some of the major projects I worked on, and more in Utah. And there was a time, though, that I didn't have enough work, so I started being able to ride my bike more and started racing. Joined a club, and we were traveling, 8, 10, 12 hours, for a race. And they kind of goaded me and said, hey, if you know how to start a race, you know how to get government permits, you know how to plan, why don't you start a race? So I did, and started Frog Hollow in 2009.
That was your first one?
Yeah.
Wow.
Tell us the impetus of 25 hours and how that or why that.
I love lap races. I had been doing a lot of my first big race was a 24 hours in Moab, which hasn't existed now for a while. I used to go down and do Old Pueblo a lot and was pretty involved with that early on. And I love the idea of a lap race. It seemed really easy mentally to compartmentalize because the course doesn't have to be that big. And then you sort of have a big gathering of people. So you get to make friends. It's not just go ride, race, and be done. It's more of creating a culture, mountain bike culture. Also, when you do a lap race, if you're not that great of a rider, every time you do a lap, you get better. I mean, if you didn't make the move the first lap, well, guess what? You're doing it again, and you're going to make it. So those were the reasons that I started. I had seen some races that were really unsafe, especially for women or newer riders. So I wanted to create a venue that I thought was a little bit safer with escape routes if you got in trouble, especially in the middle of the night. And it was hard. There was a new manager at the BLM, and he couldn't understand how somebody could manage a race and manage those kind of people. And I almost didn't get the permit. I had a lot of support from Washington County commissioners, Washington County Planning Commission, all stood up for it and had some good economic numbers on what could happen. And we had all of 64 people that came the first year.
It's an awesome race, Cimarron. I have to I've done it as a team. My favorite time doing the race, actually, after doing it as a team, several of my buddies and I decided, this stinks. We don't get to ride with each other, so let's just all solo it. And so we ended up doing that, and for 25 hours playing music, talking the whole time, awesome. Other than 3 hours that we all fell asleep in the middle of the night, which threw us off. But it was a blast. I mean, it's a cool event, a great vibe. So I agree with you that the lap thing is interesting because it allows you to, like you said, know the course. But if you get in trouble, it's not that far of a walk back to, getting the aid station. So what was next after 25 hours? What was the other races? Take us into maybe list all of them because you've got several now.
Yeah, well, and as a caveat, and maybe you know or maybe you don't, but after 16 years, I sold Frog Hollow this year. So as of 2025, I won't be running it. It's been hard for me emotionally, but it's a good thing for me to do so I can pursue some other life goals after 16 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we had the 25-hour. The next one was the 6-hour race that came the next year, and then that followed by True Grit, which was initially envisioned to be a 3-day stage race, and the BLM said start with one day, and then we'll go from there. So I'm pretty happy to say we are now a 3-day stage race. And I did those just those 3 for quite a while, and then I started a cyclocross series. And we did that for about 7 years, ending with getting to host the single speed cyclocross world championship in 2019, which happened in St. George and was a blast. The most fun event I've ever put on. I've been working on a trail project and events in Beatty, Nevada. So there's a lot of new trail building going on out there. I'm still working. It's been a 10-year project. We're still getting permits for more trails, like 45 more miles out there.
Wow.
We had a festival and the Tinker Classic we put on. And then in 2019, we launched the Rift in Iceland, which I held for 2 years until COVID came. And then in 2022, I got asked to become the race director for Unpaved in Pennsylvania, and came out to Pennsylvania for the meeting with the founding members and fell in love with the area and found a farm.
Say more about that.
Farm.
Yeah. So are you now live in Pennsylvania full time, and do you still keep a place in St. George or Southern Utah?
Yeah, I still have my house in St. George, although it's for sale. So if anybody's looking for a cute historic house downtown, yeah. But until actually this summer, I was mostly in St. George, and we just decided to do a little bit of the farming thing. I started an organic farm and hope to have a cidery as second hobby, because why not have more hobbies that turn into jobs?
Of course.
I still have another race that I started last year in Iceland called the Rain, and I'm working on another possible event that'll start next year in Iceland in the northern end. And we have a festival and 2 new events in Pennsylvania that are coming up this year.
Incredible entrepreneurship, Cimarron. I can't believe this. It's amazing.
So yeah, that's the quick rundown of all everything I'm doing now and forever.
Well, the calendar's full for sure.
Yeah.
We've participated in many of the events you've mentioned, or plan to participate in some of them as well. So we appreciate and thank you for that part, for creating these awesome events, because we need them. We need them on our own calendars so we can stay motivated to get out the door to do what we actually love. What's on the plan? How do you address with the challenges that come with promoting an event and running into, say, weather? True Grit's had weather before. I know even 25 hours had weather this year.
Yeah.
You know, how do you make those kind of decisions when you know it's going to impact a lot of people, finances, et cetera? What's your thought process there?
Um, it's always difficult, um, but uh, it comes back down to safety, um, and the health of the land. So if we don't take care of it while we're racing, we do everything that we can to not cancel a race. I mean, if you have to shorten it, you shorten it. We've done some creative fixes. Um, I'm very fortunate in to have worked in southern Utah for so long that I know the soils very well. I know when they are going to handle a weather incident, and I know when they're not. And when they're not going to handle it, that also means danger for riders.
Yeah.
So really, it's hard, but it's easy. Like, I think it's easier the more I do it, because I know I don't have to second guess myself, even though people may be second guessing me around me.
Yeah.
I made some mistakes in my 16 years, but no, you just get better at it.
Yeah. You've learned a lot.
Yeah.
So challenging to manage expectations, but how do you do? I mean, I'm intrigued because, you brought up, I mean, we'll be at True Grit, I'll race True Grit on mountain bikes, but Preston and I are actually also part of a group that's headed to Iceland, so we'll race the Rift, in July. Tell us about that event, or the events that are happening when you're managing them from Iceland to here. How do you learn and deal with conditions that way?
Well, and I don't manage the Rift anymore after 2020. In order for it to continue, it had to be managed within Iceland, but I manage other events, so I can sort of tell you it's the same process. Like, it takes a lot of planning. Interestingly, there's a lot of things that are similar in Iceland to southern Utah. And we've, over the years, figured out really good solutions. So I was able to bring those creative ideas to Iceland when we developed the race. Course marking, just, how to manage things. That they deal with a lot worse weather though.
Yeah.
Because it's summer, so it's not spring or fall where you expect it. I mean, you can have a snowstorm, and I've been in a snowstorm in July. To my knowledge, they haven't had to cancel one, but it's on you to talk about your shitty day. Say that on a podcast.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, the worst thing is when the headwind changes. So you could be headed out on that course and have a headwind, and then turn, and the headwind is coming back at you. Like, you don't get a tailwind and a headwind. You get two headwinds.
Amazing.
So the wind is the most challenging for the Rift. But it's, if I could show you, I still keep a picture of that landscape on my laptop, and I have a tattoo of Iceland on my back. It's the most beautiful place on the earth.
Yeah. And that's why we're going, ultimately, to experience the beauty of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty remarkable what you can see on a bicycle, across the world. When you think about just the places you've been, what you've seen, the trails you've built, do you have some places where you just feel like, man, this is sacred ground? It sounds like Iceland has had quite the effect on you. Just spend a few minutes in talking about the different locations and places and experiences you've had.
Well, my adventures started 2007. My first trip to Iceland. No, it was a long time ago. 2016. And I instantly fell in love with that place. And I started bikepacking at that time as well. So just about every year, I tour a different country in Europe by bike, because there is no better way to see the landscape, meet the people, and learn the culture than by bike. And I've done south of England, Ireland, Scotland, Iceland, Denmark, and hopefully Spain this year.
Say more about Spain.
I haven't planned it yet, so
Oh,
that's
but
one thing. That's one thing about my skill set is if I have some friends and they're like, "Well, we want to go on a a curated tour of a country," I can put together a full itinerary of the routes and the locations and the lodging and the food. And when we went to Scotland, we ended up on Islay and rode our bikes and did 2 whiskey tours. Slept on a barge. Got to help some people lift a moat, or in the locks.
Yeah.
On a sailboat. Yeah. So you just get wild adventures when you travel.
that's awesome. Something
But
tells me if
Iceland
you
is-
set a private tour of Mallorca, you may have a handful of people on this podcast who would follow you there, Cimarron.
Okay, I'll let you know. I'm
man.
just starting to work on that now, thinking about. Oh, you might be in Iceland, but actually, what we're gonna do is our event in Iceland is 4th of July weekend, so I think we're gonna pop down there right after that. So between the Ring and the Rift.
That's awesome.
So if you want to extend your summer vacation, sure.
That's not even a question.
Yeah.
Of course we do.
Cimarron, it feels like every vacation you go on involves a bicycle. What advice would you give me to tell my daughter that it is okay to make every vacation focus around a bike ride somewhere? Because she has a real tough time knowing that every vacation we go on, we're going to throw bikes in and we're going to take them with us.
How old is she?
She is 15.
Stumped.
Stumped is
Circle back at 22.
Stumped is right.
Circle back at 22.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So at 15, my daughter got really mad at me for wanting to have every weekend and trip around a bike. But now both of my kids are part of my events, and they've both been bike riding and bike packing, and I know that they've made it an important part of their kids' lives. So she'll come back.
She will come around. That's the goal.
Yeah.
Cimarron, do you have any moments that stick out in your mind over the years, just highlight moments, whether trail building or traveling or being involved in races, that have just kind of highlighted why you love doing what you're doing?
I mean, just could go the flashes of so many. I think I'll just pick a recent one. At Frog Hollow this year, we made the announcement that I was transitioning away from being the race director there, and the amount of love that I got, the amount of hugs, the amount of stories that people told me and texted me and emailed about how that event had changed their life. I mean, they met their spouse, or got over a trauma, or just had a great success, or just created a lifelong memory. That's why I do this. Like, it was overwhelming to know that I had touched people that way.
That's awesome. You know, one of the highlight memories of my life is in the middle of the night of 25 Hours of Frog Hollow, my oldest, who's off camera right now, he actually produces the podcast, GT, he joined me and my buddies for one lap in the middle of the night. And it was one of the coolest, hour and a half I've ever had on a bike. And
Nice.
it was a moment, a memory for he and I, but he also got to see and watch middle-aged men crash all over the place, say lots of naughty words. And it was just a moment him having, a little bit of insight into, his dad's life and his friends. And so that memory I'll always keep. So, I appreciate that. In a similar instance, at a different race, my parents, my siblings, they don't really have the same lifestyle as I do. And yet one time in St. George at your cyclocross race, the last race of the season, they all were there and got to watch me race in the single speed division. And it was just cool because they don't really see, they live in southern Utah, I live in northern Utah, but that was another moment in my extended family that your races had, a stamp in our life memories. So, and I still have pictures of that day, that are in my bike shop. So you've been involved in our lives, in a fantastic way. So I'm sure Preston has similar.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking. My two boys raced 25 hours this year. They won the 4-man category. I mean, they. As I was joking about these vacations, but so many of those vacations have revolved around the trails that you have helped create. I mean, everything I'm thinking about, even last year and here in 3 weeks, we're going to ride the very trails you created again. So, yeah, I mean, I'm going to ride those trails with a very different perspective going forward. And you think we're just two guys of thousands and thousands that ride your trails, every year. So, huge props to the vision. To be ahead of the game and ahead of the curve. Northern Utah is scrambling and they're landlocked in a way, trying to figure out how to create trails. And you crack the code, in the early 2000s, which is really spectacular. So we're grateful.
Cimarron, one thing to just end on, I want to hear you just freestyle, whatever you want to, end on. But, it's interesting. So my extended family, they meet in St. George every Thanksgiving. That's where we have Thanksgiving. And all of our families believe that we're there for dinner. But my two boys know we're in southern Utah to ride Gooseberry. Like we have our Thanksgiving Gooseberry, right? Ride. And it's just become our thing. And we kind of joke about it offline. But the memories of that, first trail that you helped create is amazing. Just, I can't thank you enough. It really has. I don't have a tattoo of Gooseberry on my back,
but if he did,
but something tells me before I die, I probably will, because it has a special place. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Were you married out on the point? Where were you married on Gooseberry?
No, there's a place called Wedding Rock. It's on
Oh, you're kidding.
The South Rim. And there, to my knowledge, there's been 2 people that have been married there. And yeah, my dog walked me down the aisle.
Love it.
And then we got on our bikes. Actually, I'm looking at the picture right now. Our friends decorated our bikes to say "just married" with little things, and we were gonna do a lap, just like go, because it's halfway on South Rim, so we were gonna do a little lap and then come down Hidden Canyon, and we got up to the staircase and looked down and saw everybody having a good time and just rode back.
Yeah,
had a great time. Everybody camped out. It was BYOC, bring your own cooler.
So good. So many great memories. Anyone that you want to mention, whether that's family, any, mentors, anybody that's been special in your journey before we end?
Kind of an unsung hero is my husband, Bryce, honestly. Almost every trail that I designed, built. And a lot of people don't know that. His name's Bryce Pratt. He including some I didn't design, like the waterfall and the barrel ride. He has to get a new hip because of all his trail work in 3 weeks. So you should be thanking him, because all of those really creative ways to get through something, I would be like, okay, I know a trail could go here. You figure it out. And he would build a rock cairn or chisel out sections of rock and make a stair. I mean, the gem drop, he chiseled out rock to make that a better flow. Took him 3 or 4 weeks of chiseling out rock.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So maybe Bryce Pratt is going on my back as a tattoo. Man, we love you, Bryce. I mean, these are the people, right? That I'm so glad we did this, because there are so many people's names that we just don't even know. We don't even know that we don't know. And yet the impact on Utah and the landscape and the memories is just incredible. So yeah, we appreciate you, Cimarron, and obviously Bryce now. We didn't even know, but just an incredible impact on our lives.
Yeah, there are many moves on Gooseberry and Little Creek that he pioneered. I don't even know if people do them now, but if you've ever seen the straight down rollers and the videos, I mean, he pioneered some of those back in 2000.
Are you? I've got kind of a silly question, but I think about it often as I ride those trails. Are you white dots or rock Karens? What is your preference?
Oh, white dots.
White dots. Okay.
Yeah.
Agree.
Yeah. Because, well, they used to have them again. As part of the editing, there were colored dots. Like somehow they wanted to color code the trail sections or something, but there's a large percentage of men who are colorblind, but everybody can see white. And the dots originally were placed in a rhythmic pattern. So if you were on a straightaway section, you would see them based on the average speed that you would go. If there was a slower section, they'd be closer together. And they would always mark the easiest move that you could do to get through that section.
More rhyme and reason to them than I realized. Makes sense. Of course.
Trail Braille.
Trail Braille.
Here we go again. Trail Braille. Anything else, Cimarron, that you've always wanted to say out loud, recorded about any topic?
No, I want to thank you. I wasn't sure what we were going to talk about, and thought we were going to talk a lot more about True Grit Epic coming up in 3 weeks. So I guess I'll just have a shout out. I can't wait to see you all there, and
we will be there.
We're going to have the largest junior contingent ever, which is pretty cool. Almost 100 juniors.
It's amazing. My son's racing that day, so he'll be in that category, which is so cool. I think it's awesome what you're doing, and in a way, maybe you can just end on this, but was that purposeful to try to create? I mean, it seems like your legacy is like so cemented, but is it part of that you want to see the next generation of mountain bikers embrace those trails?
Oh, yes, most definitely. It again, just like the trail building, the best thing that we can do in life is build something and build an experience and pass it on. And I mean, to see where all of these kids are going after they've ridden True Grit, and it's not an easy race to qualify for. You can't just sign up for it. You have to have the skills and endurance of an adult athlete. So, I mean, how many? Actually, I just learned like one of our juniors from Utah. He's now 19 or something. It just got a sponsorship with Lauf. And I mean, Utah youth particularly they're shining the way because they have the trails to learn on and the races to compete.
That says so much right there. They have the trails to actually, grow up on. And so just to connect those dots, like Utahns, anybody who's coming to Utah to ride trails, like this is the woman. Her handprints are on so much of it. So thank you, Cimarron, for all you do, everything you've built over the years, and your impact on, us Utahns and anybody who comes to to ride your trails.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for saying thank you.
Of course. You've had your daily dose.